My fiancé decided he was a trophy because he is handsome and told me that I should pay for our whole wedding. He was shocked when I made him single. When Ryan proposed after 3 years together, I thought we were on the same page about everything. We both worked decent jobs, him at an engineering firm and me as a pharmacy manager. We split rent, took turns paying for dates, and had a joint savings account for our future wedding. The ring wasn't huge, but it was perfect, and we planned a simple wedding for next fall. Everything was normal and equal until Ryan's college roommate, Trevor, got married to a surgeon who made 4 times his salary. Suddenly, Ryan was obsessed with their dynamic. Trevor hadn't worked in 6 months, spent his days golfing and gaming while his wife handled everything financially. Trevor called himself a trophy husband and bragged about how his good looks and charm were his contribution to the marriage. Ryan started making jokes about wanting that life. At first I laughed it off, but then the jokes stopped being funny. Ryan started pointing out that he was better looking than me, that women hit on him constantly, that I was lucky he chose me. He'd say it with a smile, but his eyes were serious. He started forgetting his wallet on dates, saying I should be happy to pay for the privilege of his company. When rent was due, he'd transfer less than half, saying his presence in the apartment was worth more than money. He actually used the word presence like he was some kind of celebrity. The breaking point came when we met with the wedding planner. She asked about our budget, and Ryan said I'd be handling all wedding expenses since marrying him was the real gift. The planner looked confused and asked if he was joking. Ryan explained that men who looked like him, had his degree, and came from good families were rare. He said I was getting the better deal by far, so covering the wedding was the least I could do. He said his contribution was letting me take his last name and giving me attractive children someday. The planner stared at him, then looked at me with pity. I was too shocked to respond. That night, Ryan presented me with what he called a relationship restructuring proposal. It was an actual printed document outlining how our marriage would work. I would pay all bills, mortgage, utilities, groceries, and vacations. He would maintain his physique, be available for social events, and provide companionship. He'd budgeted $1,500 a month for his gym membership, supplements, and grooming because maintaining his looks was a full-time job. He wanted to spend money for golf and boys' trips. He actually allocated himself a clothing budget because he said a prize needed proper packaging. At the bottom, he'd calculated that his physical attractiveness and social status were worth at least $200,000 a year, so really, I was getting a bargain. When I asked if this was a joke, he said successful women everywhere were looking for men like him, and I should be grateful he was willing to commit to just me. He said his mother had raised him to know his worth and not settle for less than total appreciation. He brought up his friend Derek, whose girlfriend bought him a BMW just for being exclusive with her. He mentioned his cousin Lucas, whose wife paid him a monthly allowance. He said this was the future of relationships, and I needed to get on board or get left behind. I told him I needed time to think. He gave me a week to accept what he called the gift of his permanent companionship. That's when I called his mother, Olivia, to tell her the wedding was probably off. I figured she'd want to know why. Olivia listened to everything, then asked me to forward Ryan's proposal document. She read it in silence, then said she'd handle this. She asked me to set up a family dinner that weekend and act normal until then. That Saturday, Ryan's parents, his sister Kelly, and his grandmother Dorothy came for dinner. Ryan was excited, thinking I'd called them to announce our wedding plans. His mom asked to see the prenup we'd discussed. Ryan said we didn't need one since I'd be handling all finances anyway. Olivia said she wanted to see it in writing, just to protect everyone. Ryan pulled out his relationship restructuring proposal and handed it to his mother. She read it out loud, every single word. His father's face turned red when she got to the part about Ryan's attractiveness being worth $200,000. Kelly laughed when she read about the clothing budget. Dorothy asked if Ryan had lost his mind when Olivia reached the section about companionship being his contribution. When Olivia finished, she looked at Ryan and said she'd failed as a mother if he believed being born handsome meant he deserved a free ride through life. The dinner ended with Olivia telling Ryan he had 2 choices. Requested Reads is on Spotify now. Check out link in the description or comments. I sit frozen at the dining table with Ryan's printed proposal in front of me, while his family's cars pull away from the curb outside. The apartment feels too quiet after all the yelling and shocked reactions. Ryan slammed our bedroom door so hard the walls shook, and now I'm just staring at this ridiculous document that started everything. My phone buzzes, and it's Olivia texting me to give Ryan space tonight, but promising we'll figure this out tomorrow. I appreciate her support, but I'm still processing that his own mother just tore him apart in front of everyone. I grab the paper and fold it up, then shove it in the kitchen drawer because I can't look at it anymore. The dishes from dinner are still scattered across the counter and I should clean up, but I can't make myself move. Everything feels surreal, like I'm watching my life fall apart from outside my own body. I finally force myself to wash plates and put away leftovers, going through the motions while my brain replays Olivia reading every word of Ryan's proposal out loud. His father's face turning red when she mentioned the $200,000 valuation. Kelly laughing at the clothing budget. Dorothy asking if he'd lost his mind. I finish cleaning and realize I can't sleep in our bed tonight. Not with Ryan in there, probably stewing about how I betrayed him. I grab a blanket from the hall closet and make up the couch, then lie there staring at the ceiling for hours replaying the whole dinner. Sleep comes in patches, and I keep waking up wondering if this is really happening or just some nightmare I'll wake up from. Around 6 in the morning, I hear the bedroom door open and Ryan shuffles out looking like he didn't sleep either. His hair is messy and his eyes are red, and for a second I almost feel bad for him until he opens his mouth. He tells me his mom gave him 2 choices last night after everyone left. Either get serious therapy to figure out why he thinks he deserves a free ride through life, or she's cutting him off completely. He says completely like it's the worst thing in the world, and I realize he's more upset about losing his mother's support than about our relationship ending. Then he turns on me and says I humiliated him on purpose by involving his family, that I called them specifically to embarrass him in front of everyone. His voice gets louder and he's pacing around the living room like a caged animal. I sit up on the couch and remind him that I called Olivia to cancel the wedding, not to stage some intervention. I tell him his own document humiliated him more than anything I could have said or done. He argues that I betrayed him by showing his personal proposal to his family, that I should have talked to him first if I had problems with it. The irony is so thick I almost laugh because he never discussed this proposal with me before printing it and handing it over like some business contract. He doesn't seem to register that at all, just keeps going on about privacy and trust and how I went behind his back. My phone rings and it's Olivia calling, so I tell Ryan I need to take this and walk into the kitchen. She asks if I can meet her for coffee without Ryan there because she needs to understand how her son became this person. I agree immediately because I'm desperate for answers too, wondering if I missed warning signs or if this really happened as suddenly as it felt. We arranged to meet that afternoon at a cafe near her house, and when I hang up, Ryan is standing in the doorway asking what his mother wanted. I tell him we're meeting to talk and he better not try to stop me or show up there. He throws his hands up and says, "Fine. Do whatever I want. Clearly I don't care about his feelings anyway." Then he goes back in the bedroom and slams the door again. I get to the cafe early and order coffee, then sit at a corner table where we can have privacy. Olivia arrives right on time looking tired and sad, and she hugs me before we even sit down. She apologizes over and over for not seeing the warning signs and how she raised Ryan, for not realizing he was developing this twisted view of relationships and his own value. We sit down and she starts explaining Ryan's childhood, how his father spoiled him constantly by telling him he was special and destined for great things because of his looks and smarts. She admits she didn't push back hard enough when her husband treated Ryan like some golden child, while being much harder on Kelly about grades and behavior. She says seeing that proposal document shocked her into realizing she'd created a monster by not teaching him that character matters more than appearance. Her voice cracks when she talks about reading his words out loud at dinner, about how her son genuinely believes being handsome entitles him to financial support from a partner. I ask her what the 2 choices actually mean in practical terms, and Olivia explains that Ryan has to start therapy right away with someone who handles entitlement problems and narcissistic tendencies, or he's completely on his own with money and family support. She already called a therapist and made an appointment for next week, but Ryan has to choose to go and actually participate. If he refuses or just shows up and doesn't engage, she's done enabling his behavior. She looks at me seriously and says she knows this probably doesn't change anything for us, that I have every right to walk away and never look back. I appreciate her honesty and tell her I don't know what I want yet, except some space to think clearly. When I get back to the apartment that afternoon, Ryan has a duffel bag packed and sitting by the door. He announces he's staying with Trevor for a few days because he can't be around someone who conspired with his family against him. I don't try to stop him or argue, and honestly, the relief I feel when he picks up that bag tells me everything I need to know about this relationship. He pauses at the door and delivers what he clearly thinks is a devastating final line about how Trevor's wife would never treat him this way, and maybe he should find someone who appreciates what he brings to the table. I just nod and tell him to take his time figuring things out. He looks confused that I'm not begging him to stay, then leaves without another word. The apartment feels lighter the second the door closes behind him. The next day at work, I'm completely distracted, mixing up prescriptions and having to double-check everything twice. Evelyn notices during our lunch break and asks if everything's okay with the wedding planning. Something about her genuine concern just breaks me, and I start crying right there in the break room. I end up telling her everything while showing her photos of Ryan's proposal document that I'd texted to Olivia. Evelyn's face goes from confused to disgusted to concerned in about 30 seconds. She asks if I'm seriously considering staying with someone who sees me as a walking ATM instead of a partner. I tell her I don't know what I'm doing yet, that everything happened so fast and I'm still processing. Evelyn sits back and tells me her sister went through something similar with a boyfriend who expected her to fund his whole lifestyle because he was good-looking and charming. Her sister wasted 5 years trying to fix him and make him see reason, before finally realizing some people genuinely believe the world owes them something just for existing. She looks me right in the eye and says I should cut my losses now instead of spending years hoping Ryan will change into someone he's fundamentally not. Her words hit hard because I know she's right, but there's still this small part of me that wants to believe the Ryan I fell in love with 3 years ago is still in there somewhere. That night, I'm home alone eating takeout when my phone starts buzzing with texts from Ryan. He says Trevor agrees his proposal was reasonable, and that modern relationships are evolving past outdated equality expectations. He sends me screenshots of articles about women who financially support their partners, completely missing that those are consensual arrangements where both people agreed, not demands presented as ultimatums. The texts keep coming, and he says he's willing to come home if I apologize for embarrassing him and agree to a modified version of his proposal with slightly lower monthly allowances. I stare at my phone in disbelief that he thinks lowering his clothing budget by $100 is some kind of compromise. I don't respond because anything I say right now would just start another fight, and I'm too tired to deal with his delusions tonight. I type out a message asking if he even loves me, or if I'm just a convenient funding source. My finger hovers over the send button for a solid minute before I press it. The 3 dots appear almost instantly, showing he's typing. His response comes through saying love means supporting your partner's full potential. I stare at those words, trying to process how he twisted the concept of love into financial obligation. He sends another text explaining his full potential requires freedom from financial stress, so he can focus on being the best version of himself physically and socially. I feel sick reading it because he genuinely believes this garbage. I type back asking what I get out of this arrangement besides his presence. The answer comes as a photo attachment, and when I open it, my jaw literally drops. It's a shirtless gym selfie with the caption saying most women would kill for this, so I should stop acting like I'm settling. I screenshot the entire conversation because I know nobody will believe this level of narcissism without proof. My hands shake as I scroll back through our texts, seeing the progression of his entitlement laid out in black and white. I call Marley, sobbing so hard I can barely get the words out. She tells me she's leaving work early and will be at my apartment in 20 minutes. I pace the living room, clutching my phone, waiting for her to arrive. When she gets there, I hand her my phone without saying anything and watch her face change as she reads through the messages. She stops at the shirtless photo and her mouth falls open before she starts laughing this shocked, disbelieving laugh. She declares Ryan has fully lost his mind if he thinks a gym selfie is adequate compensation for funding his entire life. We sit on my couch going through everything while she takes notes on her laptop. She pulls up our joint bank accounts and credit cards, helping me figure out what's mine and what's shared. We discover I've been paying significantly more than half of everything for the past 4 months without really noticing. Marley creates a spreadsheet tracking every shared expense and calculating what Ryan actually owes me. The number comes to almost $3,000, not counting the wedding savings. She asks if I want to pursue getting that money back legally, and I tell her I just want him out of my life completely. We spend 3 hours going through every financial connection between us, while Marley explains exactly how to separate everything without screwing myself over. She makes me promise to change all my passwords and security questions tonight. By the time she leaves around midnight, I have a clear action plan for the morning. I wake up early, unable to sleep anymore, and open our joint savings account on my laptop. The balance shows $4,800 less than it should. My heart starts pounding as I check the transaction history. Yesterday at 2 in the afternoon, Ryan withdrew $4,000 from an ATM near Trevor's apartment complex. I call the bank immediately, and the representative confirms the withdrawal was legitimate since both our names are on the account. She explains there's nothing they can do about money he legally had access to. I text Ryan asking what the hell he thinks he's doing taking our wedding money. He responds saying he needed emergency funds since I'm being unreasonable about his very reasonable proposal. Another text comes through claiming he'll pay it back once I come to my senses, and we can resume planning our life together. I'm shaking with rage as I log back into the bank account and transfer the remaining $4,900 into my personal checking account. The transfer processes immediately, and I feel this rush of relief seeing the joint account balance drop to 0. I compose a text telling Ryan the engagement is off and he needs to arrange to get his belongings from the apartment. My finger hits send before I can second-guess myself. His response comes in rapid-fire messages filling my screen. The first one calls me a vindictive bitch who can't handle dating out of her league. The next says, I'll regret this when I'm alone, and he's with someone who recognizes his value. Another claims I'm making the biggest mistake of my life by letting him go. I watch the messages pour in, getting progressively more hostile and desperate. He threatens to tell everyone I'm financially abusive for cutting off his access to our money. The irony would be funny if I wasn't so angry. I screenshot everything again, adding to my growing evidence folder. My phone buzzes with a text from Olivia asking how I'm doing and whether Ryan contacted the therapist yet. I take a deep breath before typing out what happened with the withdrawn money and my decision to end the engagement. The 3 dots appear, then disappear, then appear again, like she's rewriting her response multiple times. Finally, she sends back that she's heartbroken but not surprised, and that she supports my decision completely. She asks if I want her to try talking sense into Ryan one more time. I tell her I'm past the point of wanting him back even if he changes because the person I thought I knew doesn't exist. She responds with a heart emoji and tells me I deserve so much better than her son turned out to be. My phone rings an hour later showing Kelly's name. I answer and she immediately says her mother told her what happened with the money and the breakup. Her voice sounds tight, like she's been crying or is about to start. She tells me she wants me to know Ryan pulled similar stunts growing up. The story she shares makes my stomach turn. When Ryan was 16, he stole $200 from their grandmother's purse to buy expensive sneakers. Dorothy discovered the missing money and confronted him, but Ryan convinced their father it was justified because he needed to look good for a big school presentation. Their dad actually paid Dorothy back himself and told Ryan his image was an investment in his future. Kelly says that moment taught Ryan all the wrong lessons about consequences and accountability. She shares another story about Ryan stealing Kelly's birthday money when they were teenagers, and their father giving him the same amount as an advance on his allowance, so he could pay her back. Their mother tried to push for real consequences, but their father always swooped in to rescue Ryan from his own choices. Kelly apologizes for not warning me sooner about these patterns. She says she hoped Ryan had grown out of it, and that our relationship seemed healthy until recently. We talk for almost an hour about family dynamics and enabling behavior. She promises to stay in touch regardless of what happens with Ryan, because she considers me a friend, separate from being her brother's ex. After we hang up, I sit with this new information, understanding Ryan's entitlement didn't appear overnight, but was carefully cultivated over decades. I pull up my landlord's contact information and compose an email asking about removing Ryan from our lease. The response comes back within 2 hours, explaining our lease doesn't end for 7 more months. He sympathizes with my situation, but says Ryan has equal rights to the apartment unless I can prove he's dangerous, or he agrees to leave voluntarily. The landlord suggests I might want to consider finding a new place if Ryan refuses to move out peacefully. I stare at that suggestion, feeling this wave of unfairness wash over me. I'm the one who actually pays rent on time every month. I'm the one who takes care of the apartment and deals with maintenance issues. But I might have to be the one to leave because legally Ryan can stay, even though he contributed almost nothing financially. I start looking at apartment listings anyway because I need a backup plan. The rent prices have gone up significantly since we signed our lease 2 years ago. Moving would cost me first month, last month, security deposit, and moving expenses. I calculate the total and realize it would wipe out most of what I just transferred from our joint account. The unfairness of it makes me want to scream. My phone buzzes with a text from my neighbor asking if everything is okay because she saw Ryan loading boxes into a truck. I check the timestamp and realize the text came through 20 minutes ago, while I was researching apartments. I grab my keys and rush home from the coffee shop where I'd been working on my laptop. Trevor's truck is pulling away from the curb as I turn onto my street. I run up the stairs and unlock the apartment door. Ryan's side of the closet is empty. His gaming setup is gone from the living room. I walk through each room cataloging what's missing. He took all his clothes, obviously, but also his gaming equipment, his vinyl record collection, and several things we bought together. The kitchen is missing our nice coffee maker, the Instant Pot, and the knife set we got as an engagement gift from my aunt. I stand in the middle of the apartment feeling violated, even though technically he had every right to take his own belongings. The printed proposal document sits on the kitchen counter with a note scrawled on the back. I pick it up and read his message saying I'll realize what I lost when I'm cooking alone in my empty apartment. The pettiness of it hits me hard. He actually thinks taking my kitchen appliances will make me regret losing him. I call Marley again, and she arrives 30 minutes later with her camera and a notebook. She immediately starts documenting everything that's missing while I pull up old photos showing what we owned. We match receipts from my email to items that are gone, proving which things I paid for versus what we bought together. The expensive blender I bought 2 years before even meeting Ryan is gone. Several wedding gifts from my relatives addressed to both of us are missing, including the stand mixer from my grandmother. Marley photographs the empty spaces where things used to be and makes detailed notes about each missing item. She insists I'll need this evidence if things get uglier. I feel this weird mix of fury at the pettiness and relief that his true character is showing, so clearly I can't second-guess my decision. Every missing appliance is proof I made the right choice. Marley helps me change the lock since Ryan still has his key and the landlord approved it via email. The locksmith arrives within an hour and installs new deadbolts on both doors. I hand Marley the only spare key and tell her she's the only person I trust with access right now. After everyone leaves, I sit alone in the apartment that feels both emptier and somehow lighter without Ryan's presence. My phone shows a message request on social media from someone named Bo. I almost ignore it thinking it's spam, but the profile picture shows someone in an engineering company polo shirt. I open the message and he introduces himself as one of Ryan's friends from his engineering firm. He says he heard we broke up and wants to check if I'm okay. I'm immediately suspicious of his motives, wondering if Ryan sent him to spy or manipulate me. But Bo's next message explains several people at Ryan's work are concerned about his recent behavior and attitude. He admits Ryan's been bragging about training me to fund his lifestyle, and it made several colleagues uncomfortable enough to distance themselves from him professionally. Bo says he's reaching out because he thinks I deserve to know what Ryan's been saying at work. He asks if we can talk on the phone because there's more I should probably hear. I agree cautiously and give him my number. He calls 5 minutes later and his voice sounds genuinely concerned, not manipulative. Bo explains that Ryan's been telling people at work his relationship strategy for the past 2 months. He described me as his retirement plan and joked about how easy it was to get me to pay for everything. Bo says Ryan showed several coworkers his proposal document presenting it as relationship goals. Most people were horrified, but a few guys Ryan hangs out with encouraged him, saying he had the right idea. The stories Bo shares paint a picture of Ryan I barely recognize even after everything that's happened. Bo apologizes for not saying something sooner, but admits he thought it was just talk until he heard we actually broke up. He wants me to know Ryan's reputation at the firm has taken a serious hit, and several people have reported his comments to HR as creating a hostile work environment. I thank Bo for telling me and ask if there's anything else I should know about Ryan's situation at work. He hesitates. then admits Ryan's manager pulled him aside last week to discuss his declining performance and attitude problems that go beyond just the relationship stuff. Ryan apparently told a client during a project meeting that he was too good-looking to be stuck in engineering long-term and was just waiting for the right opportunity to monetize his appearance. The client was so put off by the comment that he called Ryan's manager to complain about unprofessional behavior. Bo says Ryan's now on what they call a performance improvement plan, which is basically the step before getting fired. His manager documented multiple instances of Ryan making comments about not needing to try hard because his looks would carry his career regardless of his actual work quality. Bo sounds genuinely worried when he tells me this because Ryan doesn't seem to understand how serious the situation is at work. I feel this weird mix of satisfaction that Ryan's delusions are catching up with him professionally and concern that he's destroying his own life. After I hang up with Bo, I sit on my couch processing everything and realize Ryan's problems extend way beyond just our failed relationship. He's built his entire identity around being attractive and expecting the world to reward him for it. Marley comes over that evening and I fill her in on what Bo told me about Ryan's work situation. She's not surprised at all and points out that someone who thinks being good-looking exempts them from paying rent probably thinks it exempts them from doing their job properly too. We order pizza and watch terrible reality TV trying to distract ourselves from the Ryan drama, but my phone keeps buzzing with notifications. 2 weeks pass and I'm finally starting to feel normal again when Olivia calls me out of nowhere. Her voice sounds shaky and tired when she asks if I have a few minutes to talk about Ryan. My stomach drops because I'm worried something terrible happened to him despite everything. Olivia takes a deep breath, then tells me Trevor's surgeon wife just filed for divorce after discovering he'd been running up massive credit card debt and lying about job searching for months. I'm stunned silent as she explains that Trevor apparently spent his days gambling online and shopping instead of actually golfing like he claimed. His wife finally decided to check their finances after noticing expensive packages arriving constantly, and found $60,000 in secret debt spread across multiple credit cards Trevor opened without telling her. Olivia says the surgeon is furious and humiliated because Trevor made her look like a fool to all their friends and family. She's demanding he pay back every cent and is pursuing the most aggressive divorce settlement possible. Olivia's voice cracks when she tells me Ryan is absolutely devastated that his role model's marriage imploded so spectacularly. She says she hopes this reality check will finally open Ryan's eyes to where his chosen path was leading him. I don't know what to say because part of me feels vindicated that Trevor's lifestyle wasn't sustainable, and another part feels bad for the surgeon who trusted someone so completely irresponsible. Olivia admits she called Trevor's wife to apologize for Ryan's influence on the situation, and the surgeon told her Ryan had been encouraging Trevor to demand more money and fewer responsibilities. Apparently, Ryan convinced Trevor that attractive men deserve to be financially supported without question, and that asking them to work or contribute was insulting to their value. That night, my phone lights up with a series of texts from Ryan, and I can tell immediately he's been drinking. The messages come rapid fire and barely make sense as he rambles about how Trevor's situation is totally different from what he was proposing with me. He insists Trevor's marriage failed because his wife was controlling and didn't appreciate him properly, not because Trevor was irresponsible with money and lied constantly. Ryan texts that the surgeon worked too much and neglected Trevor's emotional needs, which forced him to seek comfort in shopping and gambling. He says this whole mess proves his point that relationships need proper investment in the attractive partner's well-being and mental health. Ryan actually types out that Trevor's wife should have been monitoring his stress levels better and providing him with healthy outlets for his anxiety instead of just throwing money at him and expecting him to be fine. The texts get more unhinged as he continues saying that if Trevor had a partner who truly valued him and made him feel secure, he wouldn't have needed to gamble or hide purchases. He claims the surgeon's career focus destroyed their marriage and that Trevor was basically neglected and abandoned emotionally. Ryan ends his drunk texting rant by saying this situation reinforces everything he tried to explain to me about how attractive partners need special care and attention. I stare at my phone in disbelief that Ryan witnessed his role model's marriage collapse under the weight of lies and debt, and somehow twisted it into further proof that he was right all along. I don't respond to any of Ryan's messages because engaging with his delusions won't help either of us move forward. The next morning, I wake up to a much calmer text from Ryan asking if we can meet to discuss dividing our remaining shared possessions in a civil manner. He suggests meeting at a neutral coffee shop to go through the list of items he took and figure out what belongs to who. I'm immediately suspicious of his sudden reasonable tone after last night's drunk rambling, but I do want my stuff back. I text Marley asking if she can come with me as a witness because I don't trust Ryan's motives at all. She responds within minutes saying absolutely, and that she wouldn't let me meet him alone anyway. We arrange to meet Ryan at a coffee shop near my pharmacy the following afternoon. When we arrive, Ryan is already sitting at a corner table looking tired and honestly kind of rough. His hair isn't styled like usual, and he's wearing a wrinkled t-shirt instead of his typical carefully chosen outfits. He stands up when he sees us, and his face falls slightly when he realizes I brought Marley. He asks if we really need a third party for this conversation, and I tell him yes, we absolutely do. Ryan sits back down and slides a handwritten list across the table showing items he took from the apartment. He admits his mother isn't speaking to him right now because he refused to schedule the therapy appointment she demanded. Olivia apparently told him not to contact her until he commits to getting professional help. Ryan tries to start negotiating right away, saying he's willing to return my blender if I agree not to pursue getting back the wedding gifts he took from my relatives. He acts like this is a generous compromise and a sign of his maturity. Marley immediately cuts him off and points out that he stole my property, and he can't bargain with stolen goods like he's doing me some kind of favor. Ryan's face flushes and he gets defensive, saying he's trying to be mature and handle this like adults. But if I want to play hardball, he knows lawyers too. He actually says his family has more money than mine, so I should think carefully about making this a legal battle. I almost laugh at the empty threat, but instead I calmly remind him that his mother controls his family's money, and she's currently not speaking to him. I point out that his legal threats are completely empty when he can't even afford his own apartment right now. Ryan's face goes from red to almost purple, and he admits the money he withdrew from our joint account is running out faster than he expected. He's been staying on Trevor's couch, but that situation is ending since Trevor is dealing with his own divorce mess. Ryan asks if he can move back into our apartment temporarily, just until he figures out his living situation. He promises he would stay in the spare room and leave me completely alone. I tell Ryan absolutely not, and that he made his choice when he stole from our savings and took my belongings. He needs to figure out his living situation without using me as his backup plan or safety net. Ryan's face crumples and he accuses me of being heartless and punishing him just for being honest about his needs in our relationship. He says most ex-fiancés would at least help their former partners through hard times, instead of abandoning them completely. Marley actually laughs out loud at this statement, and Ryan looks genuinely offended by her reaction. I stand up and tell Ryan to return everything he took within 1 week, or I'll file a police report for theft. Marley and I walk out, leaving Ryan sitting alone at the coffee shop looking confused about why his charm and guilt trips aren't working anymore. On the drive back to my place, Marley says she's proud of me for holding firm and not letting Ryan manipulate me into helping him. She points out that he's trying every tactic he can think of, from negotiation to threats to playing victim, and none of it is working because I finally see him clearly. The following week at work, Evelyn pulls me aside during our lunch break and mentions she heard through some mutual connections that Ryan's reputation at his engineering firm has taken a serious hit. Apparently, his comments about coasting on his looks and his social media posts about deserving financial support have made him a running joke in his department. Evelyn says several colleagues screenshot his posts about relationship restructuring before he deleted them, and now they're circulating around the office as examples of delusional entitlement. People are sharing the screenshots in group chats and making memes out of Ryan's most ridiculous quotes. Evelyn heard from someone who works in Ryan's building that he's become socially isolated at work because nobody wants to be associated with him professionally anymore. His manager apparently had to have another conversation with him about keeping personal drama out of the workplace after Ryan tried to defend his proposal document to coworkers who were mocking it. I feel this complicated mix of vindication that Ryan's behavior is having real consequences, and guilt knowing my involvement with his family set off the chain of events that exposed him so publicly. Marley comes over that evening and I tell her about what Evelyn shared regarding Ryan's workplace situation. Marley immediately shuts down my guilt and reminds me that Ryan exposed himself through his own choices and words. She points out that I didn't force him to post about relationship restructuring on social media, or tell clients he was too attractive for engineering. Marley says if his own behavior makes him look bad to his colleagues, that's a natural consequence, not my responsibility to fix or feel guilty about. She reminds me that I simply refuse to enable his delusions, and that everything that's happened since then is the result of Ryan's own actions catching up with him. I know she's right, but I still feel weird about being connected to someone whose life is falling apart so dramatically, even though I didn't cause any of it directly. Olivia reaches out again a few days later and tells me she finally convinced Ryan to attend one therapy session by threatening to tell his father about the stolen money if he refused. She says the therapist asked for permission to share general observations with Olivia, since she's the one paying for sessions, and Ryan agreed, probably because he needs her financial support. The therapist apparently told Olivia that Ryan shows classic signs of narcissistic entitlement and will need extensive work to develop empathy and realistic self-perception. Olivia sounds completely exhausted when she admits she's questioning every parenting choice she made that led to this point. She asks if she was too soft on Ryan, or if his father's constant praise damaged him beyond repair. I try to reassure her that she's doing the right thing now by holding Ryan accountable, but she just sounds defeated and sad. I tell Olivia she shouldn't blame herself because Ryan made his own choices as an adult, and she's doing the right thing by holding him accountable now, instead of continuing to enable his behavior. She goes quiet for a moment and then thanks me with this tired voice that sounds like she's been carrying weight for years. She says she hopes I find someone who values me the way I deserve, and that she's genuinely sorry her son wasn't that person. I tell her I appreciate everything she tried to do, and that I'd like to stay in touch with her because I genuinely enjoy her company separate from all the Ryan drama. Olivia sounds relieved and says Kelly mentioned wanting to maintain our friendship too, because she thinks I'm good people and doesn't want to lose that connection just because her brother turned out to be a disappointment. We agree to meet for lunch in a few weeks once things settle down, and she promises to keep me updated on whether Ryan actually follows through with therapy or if he continues making excuses. 2 days later, I'm at work restocking medications when my phone buzzes with a voicemail notification from Ryan's number. I almost delete it without listening, but something makes me play it while I'm on my lunch break. Ryan's voice comes through angry and defensive right from the start. He says the therapist his mother forced him to see is completely biased, and obviously took my side without hearing his perspective fairly. He claims the therapist spent the whole session trying to pathologize his normal male confidence, and acting like wanting financial support from a partner is some kind of personality disorder. Ryan says the therapist didn't understand that modern relationship dynamics are evolving, and that plenty of successful women actively seek men who can focus on being attractive companions instead of traditional providers. He goes on about how therapy is supposed to help people feel better about themselves and build them up, not tear them down and make them question their self-worth. He says he's not going back because clearly this particular therapist has outdated views about gender roles and can't see past traditional expectations. The voicemail ends with him saying he tried to do what his mother wanted, but he's not going to pay someone to insult him for an hour. I save the voicemail because something tells me I might need evidence of his attitude later, and then I text Olivia to let her know Ryan left me an angry message about refusing further therapy. Olivia responds within minutes saying she already heard from the therapist that Ryan stormed out halfway through the session after the therapist suggested his expectations might be unrealistic. She sounds exhausted and says she told Ryan she's done helping him financially until he completes at least 6 months of consistent therapy with genuine effort. I feel bad for her having to deal with this, but I also feel validated that the therapist immediately identified the same issues I saw. 2 days after the angry voicemail, I get a text from Ryan that's completely different in tone. He apologizes for the voicemail and says he's been doing a lot of thinking since the therapy session, even though he walked out early. He admits he might have gotten a little carried away with his proposal and asks if we can meet in person to talk about possibly trying again with better communication this time. He says he misses me and thinks we threw away something good over a misunderstanding that could be fixed if we both tried harder. I stare at the message feeling immediately skeptical because the shift from angry and defensive to apologetic and humble seems too sudden to be genuine. This feels like manipulation rather than actual change, especially since he literally just said he refused to go back to therapy because it made him question himself. I don't respond right away because I want to think about whether meeting him would accomplish anything or just open the door for more manipulation. My phone buzzes again an hour later with a text from Kelly warning me that Ryan called her asking what he should say to win me back. She told him he needs to actually change his behavior and beliefs, not just say whatever words he thinks I want to hear temporarily until he gets what he wants. Kelly says Ryan specifically asked her what I would want to hear, which proves he's strategizing and performing rather than genuinely reflecting on his actions. She advises me to be very careful if I decide to meet with him, because their brother has always been good at performing remorse without actually feeling it when he wants something from someone. She shares a story about how Ryan once apologized to their grandmother for stealing money, but then did the exact same thing 6 months later after she trusted him again. Kelly says she loves her brother, but she's watched him manipulate people his whole life, and she doesn't want to see me get pulled back in by fake apologies. I text Kelly back thanking her for the warning and telling her I was already suspicious of Ryan's sudden change in tone. I decide that I'll meet Ryan one more time, but only in a very public location, and I'm bringing Marley with me for support and accountability. I text Ryan back saying I'll meet him at the coffee shop near my work on Saturday afternoon and that Marley will be joining us. He responds asking why I need to bring someone else when this is between us, and I tell him those are my conditions for meeting or we don't meet at all. He agrees after a few minutes. Saturday comes and Marley picks me up so we can arrive together. Ryan is already sitting at a corner table when we walk in, and he looks genuinely humble with his shoulders slumped and his expensive gym clothes replaced with a regular t-shirt and jeans. He stands up when he sees us and thanks me for agreeing to meet him. He starts by apologizing for everything including the proposal, the money he took from our savings, the belongings he stole from the apartment, and his refusal to see things from my perspective. He says the therapy session, even though it was just one session and he walked out, made him realize how entitled he'd become and how badly he treated me during the final months of our relationship. He talks about how he got caught up in Trevor's lifestyle and lost sight of what actually matters in a partnership. His voice sounds sincere and his eyes look sad, and I can see why Kelly warned me about his ability to perform remorse convincingly. Marley leans forward and asks him pointed questions about what specifically he learned from that one therapy session and what concrete steps he plans to take differently going forward. Ryan stumbles through answers about respecting equality and valuing partnership and treating me like a teammate instead of a funding source. He says a lot of the right words, but something about the way he's saying them feels rehearsed, like he practiced this speech. Marley asks if he's continuing with therapy since he clearly needs more than one session to work through these issues. Ryan's face changes slightly, and he admits he can't afford therapy right now since he's between jobs, and his mother cut him off financially. He says he was hoping we could work through things together and support each other through this difficult time. The moment he says this, I feel my suspicion confirmed because he's not actually interested in changing. He's performing contrition to regain access to my financial support. I take a breath and tell Ryan I appreciate him apologizing, but I'm not interested in reconciling. and he needs to continue therapy and work on himself independently before he's ready for any healthy relationship with anyone. Ryan's mask slips just slightly, and he asks how I expect him to afford therapy without any support system. He suggests I could help him pay for therapy sessions as a way to invest in our potential future together, since fixing himself would benefit both of us if we got back together eventually. Marley actually gasps out loud at the audacity, and I feel anger rising in my chest. I stand up and tell Ryan this conversation proves exactly why we can't be together, because even his apology comes with expectations that I should fund his personal growth. I grab my purse and Marley stands up with me. Ryan reaches out and grabs my arm as I'm turning to leave. It's not violent or aggressive, but it's desperate, and his fingers grip tight enough that I have to actively pull away. He says he has nowhere else to turn because Trevor kicked him out after his wife filed for divorce, and his mother won't help him until he commits to serious therapy he can't afford. He says he's facing potential homelessness, and he's asking me as someone who once loved him to please help him get back on his feet just this one time. His eyes look genuinely scared, but I remove his hand from my arm and tell him firmly to call his father, or figure it out himself, because I'm not his safety net anymore. Marley and I walk out of the coffee shop and I can feel him watching us leave, but I don't look back. In Marley's car, I feel shaky from adrenaline, and she tells me I handled that perfectly. She says Ryan will keep cycling through apologies and crisis appeals as long as I'm accessible to him, and suggests I block his number completely to create real separation. I pull out my phone right there in the passenger seat and block Ryan's number, and then go through all my social media, blocking him on every platform I can think of. Marley drives me home and stays for a few hours, making sure I'm okay. That night after she leaves, I feel this weird mix of relief and sadness washing over me. I'm relieved that I stood firm and didn't let him manipulate me back into his life, but I'm also mourning the relationship I thought we had for 3 years before everything changed. I lie in bed accepting the reality of who Ryan actually is, instead of who I wanted him to be. 3 weeks pass and I'm finally starting to feel normal again when my phone rings with a number I don't recognize. I answer, and a woman identifies herself as calling from a debt collection agency. My stomach immediately drops because I know this can't be good. She asks if I'm aware of credit cards in both my name and Ryan's name that have $18,000 in unpaid charges. I tell her I don't know anything about any joint credit cards, and she reads off account numbers I've never heard before. She says the cards were opened 6 months ago and the charges have been piling up with purchases at gyms, supplement stores, clothing retailers, and cash advances from ATMs. 6 months ago is right around when Ryan started his whole trophy husband obsession after Trevor's wedding. I feel sick realizing Ryan must have opened these accounts using my personal information without my knowledge or consent. The collector says I'm listed as a joint account holder and asks when I can arrange payment. I tell her I need to pull my credit report and I'll call her back because this is the first I'm hearing about any of this, and it sounds like identity theft. I hang up with the debt collector and my hands shake as I navigate to the credit reporting website. The login takes forever to load and each second feels like an hour while I wait to see what Ryan did to my financial life. When the report finally pulls up, my stomach turns over seeing 2 credit cards I never opened listed under my name. The first card shows a $15,000 balance and the second shows $3,000. Both opened exactly 6 months ago in March, right after Trevor's wedding when Ryan started his whole trophy husband campaign. I click through the detailed transaction history and feel physically sick reading the charges. Gold's Gym premium membership for 12 months paid up front, $400 in protein supplements from some boutique nutrition store, 6 different purchases at designer clothing stores totaling over $2,000, golf equipment from a sporting goods store, and dozens of ATM cash advances ranging from $200 to $500 each. Every single purchase was for Ryan's personal use, funding his transformation into the trophy husband he decided he deserved to be. The applications were submitted online using my social security number and our shared apartment address, and someone forged electronic signatures that were supposed to be mine. I download and print every page of documentation, my printer spitting out 23 pages of evidence that the man I almost married stole my identity to fund his delusions. I call the non-emergency police line and explain the situation to the dispatcher who transfers me to the fraud division. The officer who answers asks me to come down to the station to file a formal report, and I grab my printed credit reports and head out immediately. At the police station, I sit across from Officer Smith, who reviews my documentation with a serious expression. She asks detailed questions about my relationship with Ryan, when we broke up, whether he had access to my personal information, and whether I gave him permission to open any accounts in my name. I answer everything honestly, and sign statement after statement swearing I had no knowledge of these accounts until today. Officer Smith explains they'll investigate the applications to verify the forged signatures, and that credit fraud cases with this much documentation usually result in criminal charges. She asks if I'm prepared to press charges against Ryan, knowing it could result in jail time and a criminal record that would follow him forever. I hesitate because despite everything Ryan did, some part of me never wanted to destroy his entire life, just wanted him to face consequences and actually change. Officer Smith seems to sense my conflict and explains that financial abuse often follows this exact pattern of escalation, starting with entitlement, moving to manipulation, then crossing into outright theft and fraud. She says many victims struggle with pressing charges because they still care about their abusers, but that protecting abusers from consequences only enables them to victimize others in the future. I leave the police station with copies of my reports and a case number, feeling completely drained. My phone buzzes with a text from Marley asking how I'm doing, and I call her instead of texting back. She answers immediately, and I break down telling her about the credit cards and the police report. Marley is furious on my behalf, saying Ryan deserves whatever consequences come his way after systematically stealing from me for 6 months while pretending to love me. She asks if I'm really going to press charges, and I admit I don't know yet. That part of me feels guilty about potentially sending him to jail. Marley goes quiet for a moment, then says something that hits hard. She reminds me that Ryan didn't just steal money. He stole my identity, my trust, my financial security, and my ability to feel safe in my own relationship. She says if I don't press charges, Ryan will absolutely do this to someone else, because he's proven he believes he's entitled to whatever he wants, regardless of laws or other people's rights. She tells me to think about the next woman Ryan dates, and whether I want her to go through what I went through or worse. That night, I can't sleep, staring at my ceiling and thinking about Marley's words. I pull up my phone and text Evelyn even though it's late, asking if she's awake. She responds within minutes saying she's up and asks what's wrong. I tell her about the credit fraud and the police report, and my struggle with whether to press charges. Evelyn calls me immediately, and her first words are asking if I'm seriously considering protecting Ryan from the consequences of committing multiple felonies against me. She says her sister's ex, who financially abused her, never faced real consequences, and went on to do the same thing to 2 more women before finally getting caught. Evelyn tells me I have a responsibility not just to myself, but to future victims to make sure Ryan faces serious enough consequences that he either changes completely or at least has a criminal record warning other women. She asks me what I think Ryan learned from our breakup and his mother cutting him off, and I realize the answer is probably nothing substantial since he immediately moved on to stealing from me, instead of actually changing his behavior. The next morning, I call Officer Smith and tell her I want to proceed with pressing charges. She sounds relieved and says she'll forward my case to the detective handling financial crimes. Within 2 hours, Detective Wilson calls me to schedule a meeting to go over everything in detail. I meet him at the station that afternoon and spend 90 minutes walking through my entire relationship with Ryan, the proposal document, the breakup, and the discovery of the fraud. Detective Wilson takes notes and asks clarifying questions, particularly interested in the timeline showing Ryan's escalating entitlement and the fact that the cards were opened right when his behavior changed. He explains that cases like mine with clear documentation and obvious motive usually result in charges being filed, and asks if I understand that Ryan could face up to 5 years in prison for identity theft and credit fraud. I swallow hard and say I understand, that I've thought about it carefully, and I believe it's the right thing to do, even though it's incredibly difficult. Detective Wilson nods and says he'll be in touch once they've gathered enough evidence to make an arrest. 3 days pass, and I'm at work when Detective Wilson calls to tell me Ryan was arrested that morning at an address in the suburbs. He says Ryan was staying with Trevor's ex-wife, which strikes me as deeply ironic since she was the surgeon Ryan idealized and wanted me to emulate. Detective Wilson mentions that the ex-wife actually seemed relieved about the arrest and asked to speak with me if I was willing. I agree, and he gives me her number. I call her during my lunch break, and a woman answers introducing herself as Dr. Sarah Smith. She thanks me for pressing charges and explains that Ryan showed up at her door 2 weeks ago, claiming he had nowhere else to go after Trevor kicked him out. She felt sorry for him and let him stay in her guest room, but within days he was hinting that she should help him get back on his feet financially, since she could clearly afford it. When she refused, he started making comments about how she owed him for being willing to keep her company since her divorce left her alone. Dr. Smith says she was trying to figure out how to make him leave without causing a scene when the police showed up with an arrest warrant. She tells me she wishes Trevor's wife, meaning herself, had pressed charges against Trevor for the credit card debt instead of just divorcing him, because maybe it would have prevented Ryan from following the same path. Olivia calls me that evening and I can hear she's been crying. She says the police contacted her as Ryan's emergency contact, and she's horrified to learn about the credit fraud on top of everything else. I expect her to ask me to drop the charges or give Ryan another chance, but instead she says she'll testify against her own son if necessary, because what he did crosses a legal line she cannot excuse or enable. She sounds exhausted and heartbroken, but absolutely firm in her position. Olivia tells me that Ryan's father finally learned the full extent of his son's behavior and is equally appalled. She says her husband admitted he created this situation by constantly praising Ryan's looks and potential, while never teaching him work ethic, humility, or respect for others. Olivia asks if I want their help pursuing the charges, and I thank her, but say I need to handle this on my own terms. She understands and asks me to let her know if I need anything at all, saying she's so sorry her son turned into someone capable of this. Kelly texts me a few days later asking if we can meet for coffee. We meet at the same place where I last saw Ryan, and Kelly immediately hugs me, saying she heard about everything from their mother. She shares that their father is finally seeing Ryan clearly after years of viewing him through rose-colored glasses that overlooked every warning sign. Kelly says their dad admitted at family therapy that he created a monster by constantly telling Ryan he was special and destined for greatness because of his appearance and intelligence, while being much harder on Kelly for not being the golden child. She tells me the whole family is in therapy now trying to understand their role in Ryan's development, and it's painful but necessary. Kelly says she hopes I can eventually forgive their family for producing someone who hurt me so badly, and I assure her that Ryan's choices are his own responsibility, not theirs. 2 weeks after Ryan's arrest, his court-appointed lawyer contacts me about a potential plea deal. The lawyer explains that Ryan would plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for full restitution paid over time, 5 years probation, and mandatory counseling. I'm confused about why they're asking my opinion until the prosecutor calls me separately to explain. She says that with my cooperation, they can guarantee consequences for Ryan without a lengthy trial that would drain resources and time. She explains I'd be more likely to actually recover the stolen money through structured restitution payments than through a judgment after trial. The prosecutor acknowledges this isn't as severe as the maximum penalties, but says it holds Ryan accountable while giving him a chance to rebuild his life responsibly if he chooses to take it seriously. I asked to consult with my own lawyer before deciding, and she agrees that's smart. My lawyer reviews the proposed plea deal and advises that it's a reasonable outcome given the circumstances. He explains that trials are unpredictable and expensive. While this deal guarantees Ryan faces real consequences, including a criminal record, mandatory therapy, and legal obligation to repay me. My lawyer says the 5-year probation period means any violation sends Ryan directly to jail, which creates strong incentive for him to comply. I think about what I actually want from this situation and realize I don't want revenge or to ruin Ryan's life permanently. I want him to face serious consequences, get the help he clearly needs, and pay back what he stole. The plea deal accomplishes all of that. I call the prosecutor and agree to the plea deal with one additional condition. Ryan must have zero contact with me except through lawyers regarding restitution payments. She says that's standard and will be written into the probation terms. The plea hearing happens 4 months after our breakup, and I attend to give a victim impact statement. Ryan looks different, thinner and tired, wearing an ill-fitting suit that's clearly borrowed. The judge reads through the charges and asks Ryan if he understands he's pleading guilty to identity theft and credit fraud. Ryan says yes quietly, not meeting anyone's eyes. I read my statement explaining how Ryan's theft impacted my credit, my sense of safety, my ability to trust, and my financial stability. I explain that I'm agreeing to this plea deal not because I forgive him, but because I believe in giving people one chance to genuinely change with proper support and consequences. The judge approves the plea deal and addresses Ryan directly, telling him he's receiving an opportunity many people don't get, and that any violation of his probation terms will result in immediate jail time to serve the remainder of his original sentence. Ryan nods, and for the first time through this entire ordeal, he looks genuinely scared instead of entitled or manipulative. That expression gives me a tiny bit of hope that maybe he'll finally take this seriously. 4 months later, I'm settling into my new normal when my landlord calls with frustrating news. He explains that Ryan never formally removed his name from our lease and technically still has legal rights to return to the apartment. I'm immediately furious, asking how that's possible when we broke up months ago and Ryan hasn't lived here or paid rent. The landlord sympathizes but says unless Ryan voluntarily removes himself or I can prove he's a danger, he has equal tenant rights until the lease ends in 3 months. I hang up and immediately call my lawyer who reviews my situation. He explains that the plea deal included a restraining order preventing Ryan from contacting me, and we can use that to force a lease modification since Ryan can't legally come to my residence. The process takes 3 weeks of paperwork and court filings. But eventually my lawyer gets a judge to order Ryan's removal from the lease based on the no-contact order. I finally have complete legal control of my living space again. Evelyn approaches me at work one afternoon with a slightly awkward expression, saying her coworker has a brother she thinks I might get along with. I'm immediately hesitant, explaining I'm not ready to date after everything with Ryan. Evelyn quickly clarifies she's not trying to set me up romantically, just thinks I might enjoy meeting someone normal and decent to remind me that good men exist. She shows me a photo of her coworker's brother, a regular-looking guy with a friendly smile, and explains he's a high school teacher who loves hiking and reading. I agree to a casual coffee meeting with zero expectations or pressure. We meet at a cafe near my pharmacy, and Joseph turns out to be refreshingly normal and humble. He teaches English at the local high school and talks enthusiastically about his students and the books they're reading. We discuss our favorite authors and hiking trails we've explored, and he makes absolutely no mention of his appearance or what I should provide him. When I offer to split the bill, Joseph insists on paying for both our coffees, saying he invited me so it's his treat. It's such a simple gesture, but after Ryan, it feels significant that someone would just naturally want to treat me without expecting anything in return or keeping score. Joseph and I settle into an easy pattern over the following weeks. We meet for coffee on Tuesday mornings before my shift and go hiking on Saturday afternoons when the weather cooperates. He never pushes for more than I'm ready to give, and I appreciate how he respects the boundaries I set without making me feel guilty about needing time. During one of our hikes, he mentions his ex-girlfriend expected him to cover her shopping trips and spa days because she said maintaining her appearance was exhausting work. I stop walking and stare at him, realizing he understands exactly what I went through with Ryan. We sit on a fallen log and talk for over an hour about financial manipulation and how some people genuinely believe their looks entitle them to live off others. Joseph says his ex once told him she was doing him a favor by dating him since she was out of his league, and hearing those words from someone else makes my chest tight with recognition. We bond over our shared commitment to never accepting that treatment again, and something shifts between us that afternoon. Olivia texts me 3 weeks later asking if Kelly and I can join her for lunch to celebrate her birthday. I'm surprised she wants to include me given everything that happened, but I agree because I genuinely miss talking to her. We meet at a small Italian restaurant downtown, and Olivia hugs me like I'm still family when I arrive. Kelly slides into the booth beside me and squeezes my hand under the table. Over pasta and breadsticks, they update me on Ryan's situation. Olivia says he's been attending therapy twice a week for the past month and hasn't missed a single session. He got a job at a retail store in the mall, folding clothes and working the register, and he's been showing up on time every shift. Kelly adds that he moved into a tiny studio apartment he can barely afford, and he's been eating ramen most nights because his paycheck barely covers rent and therapy copays. Olivia's voice wavers when she says she doesn't know if the changes will stick long-term, but she's cautiously hopeful he's finally facing reality after losing everything. I tell them I'm glad he's getting help, and I mean it, even though I have no intention of ever speaking to Ryan again. Olivia reaches across the table and takes my hand, thanking me for giving her son the wake-up call his father, and she failed to provide for too many years. 2 weeks later, I open my mailbox and find an official envelope from the county court system. Inside is a check for $150 with Ryan's name on the memo line as the payer. My hands shake slightly as I hold the check, realizing this represents his first paycheck from that retail job. It's such a tiny fraction of the $18,000 he owes me that it feels almost meaningless mathematically. But something about receiving this payment makes the whole situation feel more real and final. I deposit the check that afternoon and call my lawyer to confirm I received it. He tells me that at Ryan's current income level, it will take approximately 8 years to fully repay the debt through these court-mandated payments. 8 years feels like appropriate accountability for what he put me through, and I feel a strange sense of closure knowing consequences are actually happening. 6 months pass, and I'm having dinner with Joseph at a nice restaurant across town when I see Ryan walk in with someone I don't recognize. Our eyes meet for maybe 2 seconds before Ryan looks away quickly, his face flushing red. My stomach drops even though I knew I might run into him eventually in our city. Joseph notices my reaction and follows my gaze, but he doesn't ask questions or make a scene. Ryan and his companion get seated across the restaurant, far enough away that I can't hear their conversation. I try to focus on my meal and Joseph's story about his students, but I keep glancing over without meaning to. Later, I excuse myself to use the restroom, and when I'm washing my hands, Ryan's companion walks in. She introduces herself as his accountability partner from the court-mandated program his therapist recommended. She thanks me for holding Ryan accountable because she honestly believes it saved his life trajectory. She says most people in Ryan's situation just keep spiraling until they hurt more people, but the consequences I enforced made him face himself before he could do worse damage. I don't know what to say, so I just nod and leave the restroom feeling shaky. I return to our table and Joseph immediately notices I'm quiet. He asks if I'm okay, and I'm honest about seeing Ryan and feeling complicated emotions I didn't expect. Joseph reaches across the table and covers my hand with his, saying it's completely natural to feel mixed emotions about someone I once planned to marry. He doesn't get jealous or insecure, just understanding and patient. His response makes me appreciate him even more because Ryan would have made my feelings all about him and how they affected his ego. We finish dinner and Joseph drives me home and I realize how different this relationship feels from everything I experienced with Ryan. Marley calls me the next week sounding excited and nervous at the same time. She tells me her girlfriend proposed and she said yes, and then there's this long pause before she asks if I'll be her maid of honor. I start crying before I can answer, and Marley immediately apologizes for asking so soon after everything with Ryan. I interrupt her to say I'm crying because I'm genuinely happy for her, not because I'm sad about my own situation. She admits she almost waited to tell me because she didn't want to hurt me, knowing I should have been planning my own wedding this month. I assure her I'm thrilled for her and ready to celebrate love that's actually healthy and mutual. We spend an hour on the phone talking about her proposal and her plans, and I feel lighter afterward despite the tears. Marley's happiness reminds me that good relationships exist and that I made the right choice walking away from Ryan. Planning Marley's wedding becomes surprisingly healing over the next few months. I help her pick venues and taste cakes and choose flowers, creating the celebration I wish I'd had. Her fiancé contributes equally to every decision and every expense, and their dynamic reinforces what I deserve in a partnership. They disagree sometimes about colors or music, but they work through it with respect and compromise instead of one person demanding their way. Joseph comes with me to several wedding planning sessions, and he fits naturally into my friend group without trying too hard. Marley pulls me aside after one meeting and tells me she really likes Joseph, that he seems genuinely good for me. I realize I'm falling for him in a way that feels completely different from what I felt with Ryan, built on respect and equality instead of obligation and imbalance. 8 months after my breakup with Ryan, my district manager calls me into her office at the pharmacy. I assume I'm in trouble for something, but instead she offers me a promotion to regional pharmacy manager with a significant raise. I accept immediately and celebrate that night by booking the weekend trip Joseph and I have been planning for weeks. We drive to the coast and stay in a small bed and breakfast overlooking the ocean. On our second night there, we're walking on the beach after dinner when Joseph stops and turns to face me. He tells me he's falling in love with me and wants to be official and exclusive if I'm ready for that. My heart races as I realize I am ready, that I've healed enough to trust again with someone who's proven through consistent actions that he values equality and partnership. I tell him I'm falling for him too, and we stand there on the beach kissing while waves crash nearby. 2 weeks later, I receive another envelope from the court system. Inside is a letter from Ryan marked as a one-time exception to the no-contact order. I almost throw it away without reading it, but curiosity wins. Ryan's handwriting covers 2 pages with a genuine apology that takes full responsibility for his actions without making excuses or asking for anything. He acknowledges he was abusive, entitled, and delusional during our relationship. He thanks me for holding him accountable when his family's initial enabling failed to teach him consequences. He writes that he doesn't expect forgiveness, but wants me to know my strength in leaving likely saved him from becoming an even worse person. He hopes I've found happiness and says he's working hard in therapy to become someone who could have healthy relationships someday. The letter ends with his signature and nothing else. No request for response or reconciliation. I read Ryan's letter 3 more times over the next few days, sitting with the complicated feelings it brings up. Part of me feels vindicated that he finally understands what he did wrong. Another part feels sad for the relationship we could have had if he'd been this person from the start. But mostly I feel grateful I had the strength to leave when I did. I file the letter away in a drawer and decide not to respond, recognizing that closure comes from within rather than from his validation. The letter provides a sense of completion, but it doesn't change my forward trajectory with Joseph, my new promotion, or my excitement about Marley's upcoming wedding. I'm building a life based on mutual respect and genuine partnership, and Ryan's apology, while meaningful, belongs to my past rather than my future. Marley's wedding takes place at a vineyard in late spring, with white chairs lined up on the lawn and flower arrangements everywhere. I stand beside her at the altar in my pale blue dress, holding her bouquet while she exchanges vows with her fiancé. The ceremony is simple and genuine, both of them crying happy tears as they promise to support each other as equals. During the reception, I give my maid of honor speech about love that builds both people up instead of tearing one down. I talk about partnerships where both people contribute and both people benefit, where nobody keeps score and nobody feels used. Several guests approach me afterward with tears in their eyes, saying my words really hit home for them. One woman tells me she's been questioning her own relationship, and my speech gave her clarity. Joseph squeezes my hand during the reception and tells me he feels lucky to have found someone who knows her worth. We dance together, and I realize how different this feels from my relationship with Ryan, how Joseph never makes me question my value or feel like I'm not enough. 3 weeks later, Kelly texts me that Ryan completed his first year of therapy. She says his therapist noted significant progress in developing empathy and realistic self-perception. Ryan is working 2 jobs now to pay restitution faster, one at the retail store and another doing weekend landscaping. Kelly mentions he started volunteering with a financial literacy program for young men, teaching them about equal partnerships and financial responsibility. She sends me a photo of Ryan at one of the workshops, looking humble and engaged in a way I never saw during our relationship. I text back that I'm genuinely glad he's changing, but I maintain my boundaries. His growth is his own journey now, separate from me, and I don't need to be part of it to feel closure. Joseph and I have serious conversations about moving in together after dating for 10 months. We discuss finances openly, talking about our incomes and how we'd split expenses fairly. We agree to contribute proportionally based on what we each make, with me paying slightly more since my regional manager's salary is higher than his teaching income. We make a shared budget together where every decision gets discussed and agreed upon by both of us. We find an apartment with 2 bathrooms and good closet space, signing the lease together with both our names listed equally. The difference between this healthy dynamic and what Ryan expected is so clear it almost makes me laugh. Joseph never once suggests I should fund his lifestyle or that his presence is a gift I should pay for. We're teammates building something together, not a funding source and a trophy. Moving day arrives on a Saturday in early summer. Joseph and I unpack boxes in our new apartment, organizing our combined belongings and figuring out where everything goes. I open a box labeled personal documents and find the printed copy of Ryan's relationship restructuring proposal that I kept as a reminder. I show it to Joseph, who reads through it with his mouth hanging open. He looks up at me and says he can't imagine viewing a partner as a funding source rather than a teammate. I take the document from him and walk to the kitchen trash can, dropping it in ceremonially. The paper lands on top of empty moving boxes and packing materials, and I feel something release in my chest. That chapter is completely over now. I focus fully on building a future with Joseph based on mutual respect, equal partnership, and genuine love, where both people give and both people receive. We order pizza for dinner and eat it sitting on the floor of our new living room, planning which furniture to buy first and laughing about our terrible decorating ideas. This is what partnership should feel like, and I'm grateful every single day that I chose self-respect over settling for less.